Good to have you with us and welcome to ARIRANG News live from our studio in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. First, we begin with North Korea's internet system. Its network is partially restored now, but only after access was totally denied for about 10 hours on Tuesday, Korea time. Some speculate it was Washington's retribution for the recent hacking attack on Sony Pictures. For our top story, here's Shin Se-min.
We will respond. We will respond proportionally, and we'll respond in a place and time and manner that we choose.
Days after U.S. President Barack Obama said he would take proportional measures against the cyber attack on Sony Pictures that's been blamed on North Korea, the communist state experienced its worst network collapse in years. North Korea has since gained full access to the internet, but only after 10 hours of disruptions. It's not yet clear what caused the outage, but suspicion immediately turned to the United States in light of the recent attack on Sony Pictures. Deputy spokesperson for the U.S. State Department Marie Harf declined to comment on the reports that North Korea had lost its internet access, but did say that as the U.S. implements its responses, some will be seen and some may not be seen. Access to the internet is limited in the north, and what is offered comes from a Chinese-run provider. Only a small number of people are allowed online, and very little commercial or government-related business is done on the web. For that reason, experts say the outage isn't expected to have any lasting economic effects on the north. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Well, the United Nations Security Council has decided to put North Korea's human rights violations on its agenda, which means the topic can be brought up anytime when deemed necessary for the next 3 years. Now, China and Russia were the only two countries that voted against this move. For more details, here's Connie Lee.
It's official. North Korea's human rights issues are now part of the UN Security Council's agenda.
The DPRK is in effect a totalitarian state which uses violence and repression against its own citizens to maintain itself. The regime's atrocities against its own people have created an inherently unstable state.
Members of the council voted on Monday to formally take up the issue of Pyongyang's alleged human rights abuses. This despite objections from China and Russia. However, there are no vetoes in procedural votes like this one, where an agenda is being set, so the other members were able to override the objections. This is the first time that the top UN body has taken up North Korea's human rights issues. Previously, discussions on Pyongyang were solely centered on the North's nuclear weapons program, but now all aspects of the country will be monitored and discussed. The latest ruling could also serve as a prelude to punitive measures against Pyongyang in the future, as it comes a matter of days after the UN General Assembly voted in favor of referring North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. North Korea, which has refused to cooperate at every step, quickly denounced the decision. Monday's report follows a stinging UN report released in February that said North Koreans face unspeakable atrocities. These include forced labor in the country's prison camps, deliberate starvation, executions, and torture. This latest move ramps up international pressure on Pyongyang to finally treat its own people better. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And to closely monitor North Korea's human rights situation, the UN plans to open an office in South Korea. The when and where have not been announced officially yet, but South Korean daily 세계일보 reports that the office will be set up in Seoul next March. Citing multiple sources from the government and Seoul City Hall, the report says South Korea's foreign ministry and the city are in the final stages of their negotiations. Now, the field office in Seoul would work to expand the database of evidence to hold the regime responsible for crimes against humanity. There are also concerns, though, that this will hurt Seoul's relations with Beijing and Moscow, as the two countries have previously voiced their opposition to this decision. The South Korean government will not allow an opposition lawmaker from traveling to the inter-Korean industrial complex of Kaesong tomorrow. The Unification Ministry says it rejected Representative Park Ji-won's request to visit the site as he was invited by Kim Yang-gun, North Korea's top official for inter-Korean issues. The ministry explained that since Park already visited the North twice over the last 2 months, another trip seemed inappropriate. While Park was denied entrance, the government approved Hyundai Group chairwoman Hyun Jung-eun's plan to visit the industrial zone. In other news, Pope Francis says the Vatican's bureaucracy had been infected with, quote, spiritual Alzheimer's and the terrorism of gossip. Some see this as a sign that the Pope is being met with opposition from within the church as he pushes for reforms. Kim Myung-gil has more.
Pope Francis has offered up a blistering critique on the cardinals, bishops, and priests who run the Curia, the central administration of the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope said some of the church's bureaucrats were infected with 15 ailments, as he called them, headlined by gossip.
Gossip is a serious disease that starts with a thread and grabs the whole person. It is the sickness of the cowards who, not having enough courage to speak directly, speak behind people's backs.
Pope Francis also called out power-hungry clerics who he said will kill the reputation of their colleagues and brothers in cold blood for their own greed or success. He said some were suffering from spiritual Alzheimer's and that they forgot what first brought them into the priesthood. To cure the ails that plague the church, the Pope called for reforms.
A curia that does not do any self-criticism, that does not renew itself, and does not try to improve itself is a sick body.
The Pope is hoping to use cardinal advisors he has appointed to fight corruption and poor management within the church. Part of the reforms may include reining in the curia's power, which has been concentrated in Rome for centuries, giving bishops around the world a bigger say in Roman Catholic Church doctrine. Kim Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye has urged authorities to thoroughly investigate the alleged hacking of a computer system at the state-run nuclear power plant operator. At a cabinet meeting today, the president stressed the need to ensure that there are no hazards to nuclear safety. And referring to North Korea's cyber attack on Sony Pictures, President Park urged officials to inspect Seoul's ability to counter cyber terrorism and to make necessary improvements. Now, before the cabinet meeting, the government raised its cyber crisis alert level 1 notch to the 3rd highest on a scale of 5. Meanwhile, the hacker or group of hackers that claims to have hacked into the power plant's network released another set of documents online just a short while ago. And this is the 5th time since the first were leaked online last week. The chief analyst for Asia-Pacific sovereigns at Fitch Ratings, Andrew Cohn, says Korea can show flexibility in cutting the central bank's key interest rate. Our Hwang Ji-hye had a conversation with Mr. Cohn about Korea's economy. Let's take a look.
So, Andrew, many here in Korea are drawing parallels between Korea and Japan, saying that Korea is close to the kind of slow growth and falling prices that its neighbors suffered from for 2 decades. Do you also agree with the comparison?
I think that comparison is rather overdone. We expect Korea's economy to grow about 3.7% this year, rising to 3.9% next year. And there are plenty of countries in the world that would be very happy to be growing at those kinds of rates. I think there's a risk of some months of negative price changes next year, partly as a result of the decrease in oil prices. But for an energy importing country like Korea, lower oil prices and perhaps even a temporary or mild deflation might not be such a bad thing.
So what should Korea focus more on, longer-term sustainable growth or boosting the short-term recovery momentum?
Well, it's not for us as a ratings agency to give policy advice, so that's an important point for us to stress. I think from our perspective, what I'd say is that Korea's degree or scope for policy flexibility, both on the monetary and on the fiscal side, is a strength in the credit profile. So compared to some of Korea's high-income advanced economy peers, the central bank has room to cut interest rates. Public debt is moderate, so the authorities have scope to use the budget to assist in economic management, more than is the case in many of the country's high-income peers.
Now, household debt, that is one of the major risks of the Korean economy. Could that possibly develop into a crisis that could threaten the stability of the country's financial industry?
Well, Korea does have quite a high degree of household debt compared to its peers, so roughly 90% of GDP in household debt, which is higher now than the US. Well, I think that how I view household debt is as something that decreases the economy's resilience to significant negative shock if one were to materialize. So from that point of view, it's something that weighs on the credit profile, weighs on the ratings.
And what risks could there be when the Fed actually starts to raise its key interest rate?
Thinking about financial market behavior, investors have tended to treat Korea as more of a safe haven. What I'm saying is that we don't view US monetary policy tightening as a risk for Korea in the same way as it is for some other countries in the Asia-Pacific region.
Now, that was our Hwang Ji-hye talking to the chief analyst for Asia-Pacific sovereigns at Fitch Ratings. Now, staying with the Korean economy, on Monday, the finance ministry announced a set of structural reform measures that will help secure sustainable growth. Our Kim Ji-yeon delves deeper into the topic today, especially on how next year will be a crucial year for making those changes and achieving that goal.
Next year is the golden time to carry out structural reforms of the Korean economy. This is what Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won had in mind when he laid out a set of comprehensive economic policy directions this week. There are no nationwide elections scheduled for next year, meaning that the Park Geun-hye administration can focus less on wooing voters and more on implementing changes. Developing the employment system is regarded as an integral part of the structural reforms. Choi has stated before that local companies are reluctant to hire employees for permanent positions because it's not easy to lay people off once they're hired. The number of temporary positions has reached an all-time high, with official figures estimating the number at more than 6 million this year. Those recruited for temporary positions face job insecurity and lower pay compared to their permanent counterparts, even though they may be doing the same exact work. The need for structural reforms is in the spotlight amid dismal forecasts for our Korean economy, battling low growth and a shrinking workforce. A study by the Korea Development Institute shows that the potential growth rate of 3.6% will drop to 2.7% between years 2021 to 2030 and tumble to the 1% range starting in 2031. The state-run think tank attributes that to Korea's aging society, as the number of workers aged between 15 to 64 is thinning. Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. The U.S. Central Intelligence Agency's World Factbook has a total fertility rate at 1.25, placing it in 219th place among the 224 countries surveyed. The problem is compounded by the growing number of job seekers who are part of the 7 million strong baby boom generation, who are now starting to exit the labor market in mass numbers. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Samsung Group's heir apparent Lee Jae-yong has leapfrogged a couple of other Korean tycoons to become Korea's second wealthiest person. According to Bloomberg's billionaire list on Tuesday, Lee's estimated net worth stands at around $7 billion. That's following two IPOs of Samsung companies, the IT services affiliate Samsung SDS and the group's de facto holding firm Jail Industries. He's now the 183rd richest person in the world. Now, the only other Korean with a bigger fortune than Lee is his father, Chairman Lee Gun-hee. Hyundai Motor recruits Albert Bierman. In case you don't know, he spent more than 30 years with BMW, working as vice president of the M Performance car line. Hyundai says he will begin work at the company's research center in April as the group's executive vice president. That makes him Hyundai's second highest ranked foreign executive after design chief Peter Schreier, who is credited with revamping many models of Hyundai's sister company Kia Motors. Bierman will be in charge of testing and developing performance cars, helping to improve the ride quality and handling. Now, smartphone platform services continue to evolve as they penetrate further and further into our daily lives. Experts say a bright future lies ahead of the market as Korea and other Asian countries edge ever closer to a truly mobile-only era. Kwon So-ah reports.
Information and communications technology is increasingly a part of our daily lives. And with the mobile sector now blazing forward to lead a platform revolution, it's expected that in 2015, more Koreans will take advantage of the growing number of services available to them anytime, anywhere, through their smartphones. For example, when they're on the road. Just last week, Korea's #1 mobile messenger, Daum Kakao, signed a deal with Seoul's Taxi Association and Transportation Card Service to launch a taxi hailing application next year. Shopping and food delivery via smartphone is also on the rise, making it more and more convenient to order on the go. And banking apps are also expected to gain popularity, like Daum Kakao's bank wallet Kakao, which is already being supported by 16 major banks, with more than 500,000 people subscribed to it in just the third week of its launch. Interest in these mobile platforms comes naturally, as Korea's smartphone penetration is among the highest in the world. But it's also a global trend, with more surfing the internet through mobile devices compared to PCs. Speaking at Google's Mobile First World event last month, Executive Chairman Eric Schmidt said the world is changing from a web-first world to a mobile-first world, with Asia leading the market for many years to come. And the next transition forecast for the region is going mobile only. Korea's ICT ministry reported that the number of households owning smartphones this year stood at 84%, outnumbering those owning computers for the first time. That's why industry watchers expect fierce competition among smartphone platform developers and, in turn, increased use and dependency of mobile apps in our everyday life. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Breaking the 100 million admission mark used to be a dream goal for the Korean film industry, but now that goal is not so far-fetched. More than 100 million tickets have been sold this year for the third consecutive year. Our Park Ji-won has the story.
Korean films have attracted over 100 million viewers to the nation's cinemas this year, marking the third straight year of achieving the milestone. Last year, the number of people buying tickets for domestically produced films exceeded the 100 million mark in early October. This year, it took a couple more months to reach the mark. Korean films got off to a relatively slow start this year, especially compared to Hollywood blockbuster releases, such as the latest Transformers movie and the 7th installment of the X-Men movies. However, the tide started to turn as we got further into 2014 with the opening of the period action film The Admiral Roaring Currents. The film recorded more than 17 million ticket sales over the summer, a record for a Korean film in Korea. Another Korean action film, The Pirates, was also an overwhelming success, drawing in more than 8 million viewers.
Last year, we had several Korean films attracting 3 to 4 million viewers. But this year, The Admiral, Roaring Currents achieved that figure on its own. 2014 has been marked by the success of a small handful of films, pushing us to the 100 million mark.
The popularity of Korean films is continuing into December as well, with the heart-wrenching drama set during the Korean War, Ode to My Family, and the documentary film My Love, Don't Cross That River. 박지원, ARIRANG News.
Now, but that popularity comes with fierce competition within the industry. Having said that, Korea's regulatory authority has slapped millions of dollars in fines on 2 of the nation's biggest movie chains for unfair practices. For more on this story, here's Connie Kim.
Korea's 2 biggest movie chains, CGV and Lotte Cinema, have been fined a combined $5 million for engaging in unfair practices. These practices include giving affiliate distributors more screens to show their movies and allowing them to screen the films for longer periods of time. The Fair Trade Commission said the moves gave CGV and Lotte Cinema an unfair advantage at the box office. The FTC pointed to 2 hits in particular: CJ E&M's Masquerade, a 2012 film that attracted more than 10 million viewers, and Lotte Entertainment's The Taste of Money, which was released that same year on triple the number of screens than competing films. The watchdog said the 2 movie chains also gave out free movie discount coupons without the consent of distributors.
It's meaningful because the Commission is taking strong legal action for the first time against the unfair practices of large, vertical, integrated cinema chains.
Following up on the fines, the Culture Ministry says it'll more closely monitor the screening practices of Korean movie chains to ensure that no benefits are being handed down to affiliates. The case has put the oligopoly of the Korean film industry back in the spotlight. The top 3 multiplexes in Korea make up more than 90% of screen shares in the country. And about 30% of all films produced each year aren't even released in theaters. Experts say a new platform for independent, low-budget films is needed for diversification.
I think it is a great idea for major companies to build theaters only for smaller films, but not if it's merely a temporary measure to avoid the separation between distribution and screening.
And market watchers say if these theaters reserved for small firms are given enough support, a positive synergy effect in the industry can be created. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
With the technology advancing every day, some say things are becoming more and more difficult for the traditional craftsmen. Today, our Im Yoon-hee has a look at a couple of artisans who still uphold their craft. Take a look.
They stand firm, these stone figures, like guardians of the museum. The craft of Cheongju Museum is currently home to the works of praised Korean stonemason Yoo Hae-chul. 40 different pieces line the halls that range from traditional Korean figures to shapes found in contemporary art.
I take the stones from the earth and polish them, as well as try to form them into these works.
It's not quite a glass slipper, but it sparkles just the same. Also on exhibition at the museum are the works by glass-blowing specialist Kim Jun-yong. The delicate shapes and exotic colors are melted together by Kim, but only at a scalding 1,300 degrees, resulting in these breathtaking creations.
When glass is hot, it's very malleable. So it's difficult, but by spinning and rolling the hot glass, we can create the desired shapes.
These artisans embrace both the contemporary as well as elements of the traditional when it comes to their practice. And it's these artisans who supply the lifeline to the craftsman's world in a day and age overflowing with technology. Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
and welcome everyone. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the weather updates. The cold snap has eased nationwide. It's about 4 degrees right now here in Seoul, which is approximately 3 to 4 degrees higher compared to yesterday. So moderate temperatures along with favorable sky conditions is making it comfortable for outdoor activities. However, dry weather advisories continue to be in effect for parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces. So if you're in those areas, make sure to stay hydrated. Christmas is just around the corner and there is a very slim chance of light snow for the central regions early tomorrow morning, but it won't be enough for us to enjoy a white Christmas. Other than that, it looks like mild numbers and clear skies will stick around through the end of the week. On to the readings. Seoul makes it to 5, Gwangju hits 7, Busan reaches 9. On to other places. Jeju Island reaches 12, Dokdo hits 8, Mount Kumgang dips to -3. Those are all the updates I have for you now. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back with more after 6.
And that's ARIRANG News for now. Thanks for watching. Do join us again at 6 p.m. Korea time for more updates.